ever wanted to watch an Ottawa sports event live from the comfort of your home instead of attending in person, or maybe you couldn't make it to the event but still want to catch it afterward? In this episode of Ottawa and the Future of Sports, we'll discuss how live streaming, video production, and on-demand replays give fans the flexibility to watch when and how they want, while potentially enhancing the entire sports viewing experience. Let's dive into the interview with Garmami.
Tell us your name and tell us what you do.
My name is Matthias Bedard. I run a small streaming company called PremStream.com. Essentially, the primary focus of the company is to provide pay-per-view like services for companies trying to do, events with the pay-per-view model. But it doesn't have to be just streamed. It could be pre-recorded or any kind of video content. And then on top of that, I also do what do you call it? Like the video production for events, but I kind of specialize in offering the ability to kind of do a higher tier-ish production, but at a pretty reasonable price in comparison to what else is out there. Yeah.
You service the Ottawa region, is that correct?
Yeah, for the most part, Ottawa area, but I've done stuff as far as in the States, New York, New Jersey, and I was recently in Ireland at the beginning of the year too, so I'm all over the place. But if it's up to me, I'd stay closer to home. Yeah.
Right on, right on. So I'm curious to know, Matthias, as someone who provides streaming services for
Mhm.
for these live events, how would you assess? This is a two-part question. How would you
Mhm.
assess the city's sports scene and community? And do you think Ottawa is a great city for hosting sports events?
Yeah, well, I think Ottawa's pretty central, right? Like, well, you could see by the Pan Am Championships that was on the weekend, that place is full, right? Like that
Hmm.
place is full to the brim. So I think Ottawa's a great central place for it. Um, I think again, it depends. It's more sports specific because like some sports will do better in different areas. I find like arm wrestling, for example, I find like the crowds are much bigger in the US than they are in Canada. But like yeah, like jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and MMA, I feel like it's Ottawa's fantastic place. And there's lots of good venues too, right?
What did you think of yesterday's event? Obviously, you provided videography service at the Muay Thai Pan Am Championships. What were your overall thoughts? Because you yourself, you fought amateur MMAs, is that correct? So
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
that combat sports experience. And you were on site working as a videographer. What did you think of the Pan Am Championships?
Man, I think those were probably the longest string of like awesome fights that I've
Mm,
seen in a long time because there was like 20 plus fights and I don't think a single one was a snoozer. Like everybody there was going like I was so pumped. Like I'm here trying to film stuff and the whole
right.
time, you just want to stand there and yell and scream and it's yeah, all the fights were amazing. The talent level was super 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 high. There was some especially the female fights at the end,
Mm,
like their level was like top notch. But no, I thought the fights were pretty awesome. There was all the fights were pretty competitive. I don't think I recall seeing one that was clearly one-sided.
right.
All of them were like really like obviously there's ones that were a certain person was more clearly the winner than the other, but they're all very, very, very competitive fights. Yeah.
What unique opportunities or challenges have you encountered while offering videography and or like streaming services in Ottawa sports community? Because
Uh,
it's pretty unique. Like the live streaming service, I think for most of us is especially in the model you do it, like it's a new thing. I mean, it's been around for a while, but it really became more popular, I guess, during the pandemic, right?
yeah. Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge, not necessarily for myself, but for people trying to do something similar, is budget constraints, right? Because when you're doing a high production, well, not just high level production, but any kind of production along any level, the budgets can just be all over the place, right? Like you can set up something as simple as just having, webcam and laptop, and then essentially film the event, right? And then you could have something with like a full production crew, three, four camera guys, remote control cameras, current cameras on a crane. Like you could do all kinds of wild things. So I think the most challenging thing is to kind of figure out, you know, what people's budgets are and then trying to kind of stay within that and try to maximize on, what they're able to get out of the event, right? And that was actually one of the reasons that I started doing the production for PremStream to begin with, was there was a few promotions that I talked to that wanted to do something, but they couldn't afford the 10,000 plus dollars of, the production would cost in order to do it. And I was kind of able to figure, like, I had a lot of the equipment to begin with because I started acquiring equipment years ago, doing like podcasting and some small video production for a company that I ran with a friend of mine. So over the years, I'd already kind of started to accumulate, production equipment that was, I wouldn't say like top tier, but like professional level equipment. Um, so I was able to help some of these people get a production that was of pretty high quality and, keep the price pretty reasonable for the most part. So I think I kind of rambled a little bit, but I think that kind of answers the question, right?
It did. It leads me to a follow-up, if you don't mind. Do you find that people, event organizers within the sports community, especially for sports that are more, let's say, they're established, but they're not as, say, it's not hockey, it's not
hmm
you know, baseball, but let's say let's talk about combat sports or even arm
Yeah.
wrestling, that is. Do you find they understand the value of like high-end production, you know, streaming, or, and I say high-end, and
hmm
it means, it can mean one thing or another, but
Yeah.
like really investing in that sort of uh service, like even videography, do they fully grasp the value of that?
I honestly, it's a mixed bag. Like some really grasp it and really understand it and want to get the most out of their production that they possibly can. And others, it's not that they don't understand it, but I don't think, or so not that they don't value it, but they don't understand kind of the pre-production requirements to really do like a high level show, right? Because if you really want to do something that looks, obviously, if you want a production on the level of like the UFC, for example, like you're spending like serious money and you're spending a lot of time pre-production. But if you want to do something to maximize on your budget, but also have like, cool animations in between, slow motion instant replay, fighter intros, like those are all things that have to be done, ideally like weeks, if not months in advance, right?
Hmm.
And some of that I'm able to do, but some of that I ask that they, the customers try to get as much they can done on their side to help save on costs and also kind of make the final product look like what they want it to look like, right? So I would say, yeah, it's a mixed bag. Like some really appreciate and really understand it, and some kind of see it as an afterthought, which they're okay with just having a webcam to, recording their event, you know. So it really is a mixed bag.
For sure. When you're covering these events and you're a fan of the content you cover, right?
Mhm.
How do you separate the work from the enjoyment of it? Like if you're capturing this match, this dynamic exchange between these two fighters, how do you remain focused and not get like, carried away in the moment? Because obviously if you're all in as a fan, and you've bought into the sport, I'm sure you get excited. Maybe the camera will swing a bit
It's
further
hard.
left.
It's
Like,
so hard for me. For me, it's really hard. For me, it's really hard. Some of the guy, like I have some camera guys that I subcontract. Those guys are way better than me at that, right? Like those guys are completely focused and they kind of narrow in on, what they have to do and follow the action. Me, myself, I kind of have to keep it together. Like if I'm 90% of the time, I'm more behind like handling the producer role, like choosing the camera angles and kind of pulling things on and off screen. So I'm usually there, but sometimes I man the cameras as well. And
mm,
I would say I'm a pretty good camera guy, but it is hard to keep it together. What I try to do a lot of the times is in between rounds, I'll kind of put the camera down. I'll kind of reflect on what just happened. Like, oh, that was awesome. Did you see that kick? Like,
right.
so but when I'm behind the desk, behind the computer and I'm kind of playing around with stuff there every once in a while, it does kind of, you do get excited, right? Because I am a super fan of combat sports in general, not just Muay Thai, but even Jiu-Jitsu and arm wrestling and all kind of, competitive type combative sports.
Mm.
Um, but I would say for me, I don't really have any, tactics to kind of keep it together. It's just try my best not to, to mess up the job, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's a unique challenge because it's especially, you know, some of yesterday's matches, at least all of them as you
Mm,
described them, I agree. I didn't see all of them. I came much
mhm.
later on in the evening, but the ones that I saw, each one of them was the booking was excellent. You know, the
Yeah,
matchmaking.
so good. So
Yeah,
good.
because I mean, each match, both competitors were really giving it, and it was I mean, you could hear the fans roaring, and that's always a sign
Oh yeah.
of a good show. Next question for you is from your perspective as a business owner serving the
Mhm.
local sports scene, what improvements or changes would you suggest to enhance Ottawa's sports ecosystem? I know this is a big question,
Mhm.
but like, what's that one thing? Because the things you do as a service provider, it's an interesting service, and it's an interesting business, and it can really enhance, like, the live streaming capability is brilliant because as a fan, if you can't show up on site, let's say you're sick and you want to go check out the arm wrestling or the
Mhm.
jiu-jitsu event or the Muay Thai event, you can just watch it online, just like UFC Fight Pass, and it's in your town, right? So
Yeah.
in terms of improvements or changes, what would you suggest to enhance the entire sports ecosystem here in Ottawa? Big
Yeah,
question.
that's a super open-ended question, right? So,
Totally.
I think at the very end of the day, it's very financial, I would say, right? Because the finances of an event is a big determining factor on the quality of the event, right? Like if your budget's zero, you can still make something magical happen, but it's very, very, very hard, right? So, especially with the costs of venues now, right? I don't know if I should say what some of the venues cost in the Ottawa area. They're very expensive, and I
Mm,
feel like since COVID, um, I feel like a lot of like everything's gone up in price, obviously, right? But like when you're talking percentages, the cost of a venue for a weekend, that's gone up a lot. So if I had to suggest something to like the Ottawa government, I would say,
mm,
help subsidize some of this stuff, right? Because there's a lot of really awesome promotions that are, I don't want to say small as like an insulting way, but like they're smaller promotions, but they're trying to do some really big stuff. But it's hard financially because there's a lot of things that are, very, very expensive, right? That would be the biggest thing. But the other thing is, I think some people need to just kind of play ball with each other more. I feel like there
wow,
are,
good.
you
It's a
know,
good point. Good point. Please
yeah,
continue.
like yeah, so like behind the scenes there are certain people that are trying to promote certain events, and then there's other people that they want to promote their events, and they don't necessarily support each other in the right ways, right? There's some bad talking behind the scenes and a bit of drama that sometimes it doesn't help, right? Because at the end of the day, it's
Right.
just because there's one event happening one weekend and another event happening the next weekend. I think there's enough people that are, craving for quality entertainment and content that there's room for everybody, right? Like there doesn't have to be, one promotion kind of rules them all. I think there's room for not I wouldn't say unlimited, obviously not unlimited, but there's tons of room in this space.
Very interesting answer, and I'm in full
Yeah.
agreement. I think if they share their calendars in advance and kind of facilitate a way where they're not I mean, they're not competing against each other because
Yeah.
if there was an event every weekend, you best believe there would be some people who would attend each one. That's how, you
Yeah,
know what I
for
mean?
sure.
That's how
Yeah.
much they want to see it. Um, the last question for you, and I guess it's somewhat related to the one I just asked. How do
Mhm.
you see your role contributing to the development of sports in Ottawa, and what support or initiatives would you like to see from the community or local authorities to better
Mhm.
serve the sports industry? I think you've kind of answered that one already.
Yeah. Well, my role is well, I guess multifactored. So one, I want to help um, promotions and sporting events get a better like online presence, right, from a video standpoint. And I also want to help them generate new types of revenue streams that they weren't able to get at before. And that's a huge thing. Like it used to be, and YouTube, there's still a little bit of money to be made in supplying content for free. But the ad revenue's gone down like drastically. I feel like every other year, it's like things are getting either less views or the monetized content, even though it's getting the same amount of views, it's getting half the amount of revenue for that content.
Unless
And
you're Mr. Beast. Sorry. Go ahead.
well, yeah, though there are exceptions for
Right.
sure, but there's very, very few in that 1% that have like the tens of millions of, subscribers that they can make tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars per video, right?
Wow.
Most promotions, when they're even promotions that are fairly big, that do get like 100,000 views on an event clip or whatever, that doesn't cover a fraction of the cost of hosting those events.
Mm.
So even having a small pay-per-view platform or a small pay-per-view portion of the event, like I always suggest that people put out a free portion when doing a stream, like have some prelims or something, have a free portion and then have a paid portion. And even though that paid portion might not cover the entire cost of operating the event, it's definitely revenue that you wouldn't have seen otherwise, right? And you can always double down on the monetization of that content if you want by releasing it as free content weeks or months down the road as well, right? But being able to do the pay-per-view model, it's it's a revenue stream that a lot of people overlook because there is a decent amount of money to be made there. Obviously, it's very sport dependent,
Mm.
and it's very, very dependent on how you market the sport and who you have involved in your event, right? So
Mm.
if you have an event that has just a bunch of local guys competing that don't have a big social media following, you're probably going to make a lot more money like at the gate with people attending, and you'll probably make a little bit less money online. But if
Right.
you have some people that have a decent social media following, you can make a decent amount of money, getting pay-per-view revenue for that event if you market it properly and people are involved with that. The one of the things that PremStream does is I allow organizers to create promo codes for their access to the pay-per-view and then
Nice.
essentially determine a revenue split, for the athletes. And
Wow. Wow.
yeah, so that was something that when I originally started the company, that was a big part of what I wanted to do was help the money go from the promoters down to the athletes as well. So as it is right now, it's still an automated process. Like the promoter gets all the money for the pay-per-view and they have to distribute it. But
Right.
what we're working on and will probably be available early next year is to automate that entire process where a promoter can give out the promo codes, the athletes can then distribute those promo codes, and the athletes can actually see who's purchasing with the promo codes and then automate the whole money transfer to their bank account. So the promoter doesn't, they do again right now they distribute it manually, which is
Mhm.
it's good and it's bad. It's sometimes it's a pain depending on how many athletes you have on there. But the fact that we're going to automate that, it's going to really change things, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. That sounds really interesting. You're working in a the work you're involved in is innovative, potentially innovative tactics and approaches on the marketing, but also on the monetization that'll incentivize athletes to promote the event even
Yeah.
with more oomph because now, you know what I mean? There's a
Hmm.
return for them and it kind of it disrupts the traditional model. That's fascinating. Where
Yeah.
can people find you? Where can event organizers
Mhm.
or anyone find you and follow up if they're interested in booking
Yeah.
something?
So like premstream.com is the website. So PREM stream STREAM. I think I spelled that right.
I think so.
And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, we have all our social media is a bit on the lower end. Like there's not a lot there, but it exists. So you can still reach out through the Instagram or the Facebook account, or you can finding me on Instagram is probably the easiest thing. So Matthias Bedard on Instagram is probably the quickest way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your
Yeah.
time, man. And I look forward to seeing you at future events.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime, man.
Thank you for tuning in to Ottawa and the future of sports. If you like what you're hearing, feel free to follow wherever you get your podcasts. If not, why not start your own Ottawa-based sports podcast? The more local reporting, the better. Just do it.